Welcome, everybody, to this final discussion on this beautiful book, The Winds of Spirit. I am Bridget Hopkins, and today we're going to be discussing two chapters, actually. We're going to discuss Chapter 15, Cooperating with Your Inner Winds, and Chapter 16, Removing Resistance to Change. So we will do our best to discuss both of those chapters in depth as we wrap up this beautiful time that we've shared together in our book discussion. And what I would like to do today is we'll go to our sacred space and we're going to do wind breaths. So I invite everybody to get into a position where you're actually able to stand. Okay, Carrie, you're driving, so I'll ask you not to do that. But everyone else, if you could just get into a position where you're able to stand up. And also, if you have your wind whistle, you can bring that with you. All right. Hi, Jamie. Welcome. Okay. So just go ahead and take a moment. We're really going to draw our attention to this present moment by noticing our breath. So first, connecting to the breath and really feeling it travel all the way through you. And doing that one more time, drawing all of your attention back to this moment. And really watching your breath come in and go all the way through your body and feel it on the exhale. And using the power of our imaginations, I invite all of us to gather in the field. And we'll begin to make our way through the stone archway into our sacred space, entering to the right and circling to the left. And as we all come into our sacred space, I invite you to stand, feet shoulder width apart, knees slightly bent, and just give your body a nice shake, like really shake off this day. Feeling your feet on the earth, and if you're unable to stand, that's fine. Just use your imagination and really connect to these physical points that I bring up in my guided visualization. So noticing your feet, moving your attention all the way up to your mouth, and we're going to begin our first wind breath. As you breathe in, I'd like you to breathe in to the count of 10, hold for 10, and release, and really stay with the emptiness. And on your release, I encourage you to use your wind whistle if you are able. So we'll begin with our first breath in. Hold for 10. And now breathe out. And stay empty. Stay empty. And begin to breathe in to the count of 10. Hold for 10. And breathe out through your whistle. And stay empty. Empty. And begin breathing in again. Hold. And breathe out. And stay empty. And now resume to your regular breathing. And as you do that, I'd like for you to really once again notice your heart space and imagine the energy that's flowing from your heart goes down to your feet, around your feet and up your back, around the top of your head, and just watch that energy cycle for a few times. And if you'd like to imagine it widening, you can even open your arms out. Just keep encouraging that energy field to get bigger and bigger, to fully encase you. And then just give a little wiggle to your fingers and toes. Ever so slowly begin to open your eyes. And I welcome you back to this moment. Welcome, everybody. So here we are at the end of our book discussion. I can't even believe it. I feel like excitement and a little bit of grief at the same time. So I'm just holding both of those gently in my hands. And, you know, in chapter 15 on page 117, she was talking about how it's important to notice that remembering that these beneficial winds have endured throughout history. And this word always stumps me, phenomenological research and group study have shown that these deities teach you how to cooperate with change while not necessarily supporting your desired results. And one thing that I was thinking about, there's a lot of talk about the ancestors, and Renee has mentioned countless times how the winds, travel throughout the entire continent within a few days, and how the very first breath or wind was of creation. And thinking about how old the wind actually is that's entering us. So this ancient wisdom is cycling through us all the time. And it's mingling with new wisdom too, right? Like new consciousness and old consciousness, back and forth, traveling around the globe. And the question came up to me that it may be possible the first being's exhale has circulated the planet millions of times. Doesn't that just give you a shiver when you think about that? Like the very first wind, the wind of creation is still circling our planet. That blows my mind. It's like hard to conceive, but I physically, when I say it, I can feel it. What do you guys think when you hear that?
What came to my mind is that, so you're taking a breath today, and if it was your last breath, that breath will be continuing on. So even when our physical body is no longer the active breath, the intentional breath that we're, participating in up until the end, and that last breath continues on.
Yes.
As a presence.
It's really trippy, right? Yeah, Deborah, Jamie, do you want to throw anything into the pot?
Sure, I'll see what comes up. This is an incredible thought. It's so big that I'm not sure if I'm grasping it all about these ancient winds.
Mm-hmm.
To be breathing the same breath of so many ancestors, of so many beings. you know, whether it's two-legged or four-legged or
Mm-hmm.
winged, or, you know, it really emphasizes that we are all connected, you know, that there is no separation.
Mm-hmm.
But I hadn't really thought of it in terms of these winds and our breath going around the world until this study.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love the idea that our last breath is like a gift back to the world when
Mm-hmm.
we leave. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's like part of us is still there to to be shared with the rest of everyone and everything, all earthlings, human or not. So thank you for bringing that up. I
Yeah.
like that.
It really, as I was reading the chapter again, I was like, boom, one of those wind epiphanies, right? Like, whoa,
Yeah.
wait a minute. What am I picking up on here? And, going back to, we've talked so many times about taking care of ourselves, right? Like really being in right relationship with our bodies. What about being in right relationship with the wind breath itself? Right? If it's the last breath going out, making sure that everything is tended to, knowing that these ancient breaths are circulating the planet every single day and really tending to that, and what can that look like for each of us? Because it'll be a different type of attention that each of us pays. But I think just the noticing of, maybe there's something that I could be doing a little differently or with more reverence or attention, and what can that mean for me?
That really speaks to me because I'm having some breathing difficulties
Mm-hmm.
and going through a series of doctors and things and tests. But um, it's come to my attention lately, you know, how much I just don't quite understand why this is happening with my breath. It shuts off at night. So I'm going to
Mm.
do a sleep study as well. But then there's all this dryness, and it's just a mix of things, but I'm unable to breathe as deeply. And so this is something I'm bringing in with me to the becoming a wind alchemist.
Oh, good. I'm glad
And
you're going to be there.
yeah, and to begin the wind walks and make it a daily thing. One of the things on that same page, that 117, the very first paragraph, I thought was really a wonderful reminder, especially for me because my practice is not really set for some reason. There's some chaoticness about my practice in the morning, and I'm normally very, very good about that. So there's some confusion. But anyway, it says once you have established a practice of praying, meditating, and grounding on a daily basis, you will be ready to call upon the inner winds for soul support and guidance. And I think that's important, that we need to do our personal work first, that
Mm-hmm.
we need to understand and have some kind of, and I have actually several different ways. I work with one, a couple different practices in the morning, then I switch to something else. And right now there's just some confusion. So it's reminding me to pay attention, to make sure it's daily. And anyway, I thought that was important because when I went to prepare myself to tie the knots, the wind knots,
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't do it. It was like it was not the right time. There was something missing. And I realized my practice isn't steady right now, and I think I need that
Mm-hmm.
before I can tie the knots.
Mm-hmm. I would love to ask Carrie and Jamie if there's any insights that they would like to share from an eye perspective about that, about your sharing. You know, like if they were in Deborah's position, what would you be noticing? Or the different way to frame it would be like, if I were in that position, I might try, or I might be experiencing, just saying it from an I perspective.
About the uncertainty of tying the knots?
Well, it seems like it's all interconnected when I listen to it. Like if that was my sharing, I would be noticing a couple different connections. So I was just wondering if there's anything you wanted to share as support to Deborah.
Well, I guess if I could just think for myself of when I brought in the wind work and I already had established practices, and then I was starting to call in wind work with it. It does shake it up. It did blow in some new energy and it's shifting and letting things settle. When I have had that experience of, geez, like this seems really sacred and important. Like I don't want to tie these knots. Or even when I was first picking winds, I remember being hesitant and thinking, this is really important. And so you want to give it the space. But I would maybe say from this vantage point of using the practices, the wind breath, and then asking for guidance about the wind knots, but about the wind work in general, is going directly to the wind and getting that guidance and trusting that answer.
Mm-hmm.
I have something to offer. I'd like to, pun intended, tie back to what you were talking about, having trouble with your breath. That, the sleep study and the interruption of breath at night, and that perhaps the inability to tie that wind knot is that you don't have that, that you're not ready to, because of tying into that. You know what I mean? Does that make sense, Bridget?
Absolutely, to me.
Like that whatever that's cutting off the wind, I believe it's tied into the knot tying the knot.
Well, and just for me, Deborah, I like to share like what's alive or what's currently going on in my own world. And, I notice that I'm really sensitive to the collective. And as we're ending this decade, right? So 10 years of experiences and change and a lot of uncertainty the last 5 years or so. And I am noticing that my breath, and I have been a belly breather for a long time, I'm noticing that my breath has been shortened. And I'm wondering if it's some type of, I just keep paying attention to it and inviting myself to go deeper. And what am I pushing up against right now? So if my body is an instrument and my breath is being captured prematurely, somewhere where it's not making it to the depth, what am I pushing against in the external or internal? So I just keep noticing that. And my personal practice has been a little all over the place too. And so I'm like, as I listen to you, I'm like, I don't think that this is a coincidence. And in my history, when I start to bounce around with my personal practice, I love how Carrie was saying, when we're working with the winds, they tend to be a little disruptive at times. And it is true, because each day, every couple hours could be a different wind, either wind deity or dynamic, depending on what's going on or how we're thinking and engaging. But what I notice with my personal practice is that when I start to bounce around, it's because I've touched a little too closely to either a new part of myself that I don't know well yet, like the intimacy has deepened, and I'm like, ooh, I'm a little like hesitant in some way. And again, I don't have all the answers around that. It's just my own personal noticing in my life. But I have been noticing that my breath has been shortened lately, and that's new and it's not usual. So, thanks.
Thank you,
Yeah,
everyone.
absolutely.
It gives me something to work with and think about.
Yeah. Well, and I just, with these conversations and moving forward, when Renee and I host things, we always like it to be interactive and communal. So it's not just the, world according to Bridget or Renee, when it comes to the community discussions, so feel free to chime in. I only ask that we do it from an I perspective, so we're not like, Deborah, you, or Jamie, you. It's like I, right? And if it's helpful, cool, throw it in.
I'd like to talk about what you opened with, the breath going around the world. In a physics class in 1981, the teacher worked out on the board the mathematical formula for that.
Ooh.
That there's a whole mathematical formula for that phenomenon, and that it took up the whole class lecture, and it was one of the main things I got from that class. And and the whole moral of the story is you really need to be mindful, or he didn't say mindful, but just be careful what you put out, what goes out,
Mm-hmm.
You got to be careful of what's going in, but you got to be careful what's going out. And also to tie into that it's not just humans or animals, it's also the plant life, it's the plant world, because they're in this communication of expiration and inhalation, they're part of the whole cycle of breath. Is that their part is the counterpart for us, the animal kingdom, in a lot of ways. And so we are all one. It is and I think our planet breathes. I think planets breathe as well. I think there's recently Uranus, they've been able to track that breath. So I think it's really important to honor that and to share that. I really appreciated it in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it opens our perception. I would say if there's one review that I could give to the Winds of Spirit, I mean, it's so jam-packed with knowledge, but it opens perception. And that is always a gift if we're willing to receive it, right? Same with the winds. The winds, they blow the doors open. But so on page 118, bear with me here. Okay. So to put their power into perspective, these winds of spirit witnessed and participated in the creation of the earth hundreds of millions of years ago, long before the advent of human beings. And so what I was wondering is, and I brought this up at the beginning, is does this mean that ancient wind is still current today? And does the wind age? That was a thought that I had. Does the wind age? If we're always changing and growing and, accumulating and shedding, if you will, what about the wind?
My first thought is, and I was like, does this even make sense? Is it, it lives through us. It's like rebirth. It's like a death and a rebirth with the inhale and the exhale. And I feel like spirit is, spirit is timeless, right? So, but through us, there is this birth and rebirth. And something that is just popping in my mind that, again, it's just a fleeting thought that made me think about how we are talking about breathing in the energy of gods, goddesses, or energy, but the archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a structure through the collective humanity that we just, there's some sort of structure, and the winds having something to do with that structure of who we are and who we like, multiple aspects of ourselves. So I don't know, I just got this huge download about it. I can't really articulate it all, but there's something to that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and as I'm listening to you, I too am getting some guidance, and it's like, ooh, this is fun. We just popped a cork on something. Tapped a champagne bottle of wind knowledge. But
yeah,
I think, and I want to throw this out there because I asked some stirring questions, and again, I'm not an expert, and I'm not asking these questions to induce an extra sense of responsibility or even a heightened state of any type of fearful thoughts, right? Like, ooh, I can't put that out into the air, or ooh, I shouldn't say, it's an invitation for us to just be a little bit more cognizant. And so as you were talking, Carrie, I was thinking about the relationship, because I always go back between wind and water. Like, there's such a strong connection between wind and water. And I was thinking about how when it rains or when there's fog, it's almost like that's a reminder from the wind, hey, I'm cleansing myself, and I'm giving it back to the water. The water is going to help us keep refining this and filtering it and cleansing it. So you keep doing your work, and we're going to keep doing ours, so that we can all be, growing. Because remember, I said, do these ancient winds age, right? So I think that to keep everything growing, the system has to be healthy in some way, right? Or regenerative. So yeah, as I was listening to you, I was like, oh, wow. I wonder if that could just be a visual from the wind when it's raining or foggy, like, I'm doing my work too.
Hi, it's Kim.
Hi,
Sorry
Kim.
I joined late there.
No problem.
But that's a really interesting question, Bridget. Because, as everybody was talking there and sharing, I was thinking, what do I think? And I, if I think back, though, to some of my teachings, I think, okay, well, this reality is a reality that we create.
Mm-hmm.
This physical manifestation is a reality that we create, and our manifestation that we create. So, and like you say, the winds and the water, the elements are timeless, though, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
they don't fall into the same, they don't abide by the same kind of time and space rules that we seem to see ourselves needing to abide by. And so I'm thinking, yes, they're timeless, but just like us, they are ever changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so ever evolving or ever changing. And, so the wind, I was part of a Pema Chodron online class at one point, and she asked a similar question about, what if you think you change, or if you think you evolve, and does your spirit evolve? And again, I think everything is always changing. I think even in this physical manifestation, we're always changing. Our thoughts, our beliefs, physically, emotionally, spiritually. So but at the same time, where we come from is that collective consciousness. It's is timeless too, right? It's not constricted or restricted by time and space. It's that is just something I think that helps us to understand this reality, this body that we're in, this physical manifestation that we're in. And I like that question. Thank you very much for asking it.
You're welcome. I love stirring our noodles.
Yes, perfect.
Bridget, we
I
do
love that.
have that expression in our language. The wind has died down. You know, and that when that doldrums, when there's that absolute no wind, maybe that's what that where all winds go to die.
Ooh.
And that sometimes it's after a lot of wind, but if you've been around somebody who's passing, that breath that they have, it's like that gas that it's once again it's that cycle pump of air and wind, and then there's no breath, and maybe that's what happens when the wind dies down.
That's great. Thank you, Jamie. Paula, would you like to chime in?
No.
Okay.
So, carry on.
I love it. Okay, so also on page 118, she writes, I believe they have arrived to assist humanity into a higher state of existence, which the Vedic traditions call the Sai Yuga. They are here to help us reestablish our divine connection with nature. And I was just wondering, since you've been doing this book study with us, what are some of the things that are new in your relationship with nature since starting the book study?
I'd say for me, it is the focus on the wind, that the wind is now central, but also because I spent a few years, I've had about a dozen years of really consciously studying shamanic work and experiences and whatnot, and part of a tribal community, a nature-based community. And so I spent a few years with developing my relationship with the earth, and then a few years with the fire. It just naturally came. Earth came first. And then the fire was gifted to me by a curandera. And so that just opened up that one for a couple of 2-3 years. And then the water. I became a water carrier, a water bearer for our community for several years. So it's natural. I didn't know I was doing that. It was just as I was led, and I was led into the wind. So this has been wonderful having this book. But I think the new things are mainly that focus now on the wind, but also I'm amazed at how all the teachings that I have, all the tools in my basket, all apply here as well. And how I've been searching. I did a dissertation on a shamanic journey to wholeness. And I'm trying to turn that into a book, but I've been kind of stuck as to, well, what's the container for it all? I want to change it. It doesn't need to be a doctoral dissertation anymore, but the information's important. And it's mainly having to do with how we develop our relationship to nature, how we deepen it, right? So this is just like opening up a whole nother window for me. With a different perspective. And I think it was like I need all four perspectives, but I'm also thinking that the wind bag, the idea that the winds have been carried by these gods and goddesses in a bag that Renee speaks of, that maybe that's the container for my book. So as far as many of the things brought up, I know from a different perspective, but it's changing at how we look at it. And I really agree with Renee on this idea that they've come now because we need them. And when we think about that aging, does the wind's breath, does it age? I don't know so much about it aging, but I do feel it changes because we are breathing different things into it, exhaling and inhaling, but what we exhale into it has got to have some effect. And it kind of feels like we're the chaos we've been in for this last several years, and in our relationship to the climate and the earth, that it's been shaken up and we need new guidance. So I believe she's definitely right about this.
Yeah, and it's really, really interesting because as you were talking, the thing that came to me is, and this isn't about separation, but it hasn't come together fully into a cohesive thought for me yet, so it's going to sound like separation, but almost like that parent-child relationship where parts of the parent are in the child, but the child still has to learn how to become the adult themselves. So the parent has that autonomous wisdom to help garner and guide the child while maintaining their own autonomy, right? Like I am still the parent and you are the child having your own experience. And that's how I'm thinking of these ancient winds. Like they hold the container of their knowledge and their age, right? While letting us figure things out in this experience of life, and like going back to them, like tapping them on the shoulder, like, okay, now I'm ready to listen again. Okay, now I'm ready. Please guide me. Please show me. Okay, please help me again. Right? That's what was coming through when I was listening to, like, ooh, it's like going back to the first elder. I don't know. I feel like I've had too much coffee or something tonight, you guys. I'm like, woo! What is it about chapter 15? It's blowing my mind. I can't take it.
We're only two pages into this. There's 2 chapters, but it's so deep.
It's so deep. Yeah.
So deep. And it's like, I just want to take a big breath and take it all in.
Let's do that. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so would anyone else like to share what is new for you with your relationship with nature since beginning this book study?
I've been taking this outside.
Ooh. Oh, that's beautiful, Jamie. Thank you. What a rich sound. Ooh. That brought me right back down to earth. Thank you. That's very grounding. Oh.
I'd like to share.
Yeah.
That, of course, I've talked before about the wind walks. Because of my chronic health stuff, I hadn't been walking for a long time. I mean, other than daily activities, chores, whatnot, but not taking actual walks in and of themselves. And in nature, and I started this summer going out at dusk or later, and it was amazing. Because I started with shamanism probably December of 16. Whatever, this year has been intense with that. But the wind work then I associate with the walks, and then of course adding in calling the winds in to my life and asking them to help navigate my life. And it is going deeper, and because I've been on a spiritual path for years and years and years, but this is different.
Mhm.
It is. And the connection with nature, I've always felt connected, but I had no idea, you know, who knew? Who knew?
Yeah.
Who knew the wind wanted to talk to you? And might have some really good advice or guidance, or, I mean, it's really, when I think of it, this whole thing that they came here to help us, that for me is wow. You know, it's like, God knows we need it.
Mhm.
And so it's humbling and it's exciting and it's really, wow, makes me very grateful.
Mhm.
And I'm grateful to be a part of it. It's like, I feel like in ways I've been waiting for this my whole life, or building up to it, I guess. So, and I go back to what I call the promises in that early chapter
Mhm.
of what the ancient ones can help you do. And I like your first elder. That's a great idea. The first elder. So I didn't have too much good guidance in my elders.
Right. It's missing for all of us in many,
Yeah.
many ways. It's a
And yeah,
cultural deprivation. Yeah.
yes, right. I grew up with indigenous ways, and it's like, I mean, I feel hungry and thirsty for it. It's like, oh, this is like I get the chills when I said that.
I
So
did too.
it's like the missing piece.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
thank you, everybody, for being here. And yeah,
Thank you, Paul. I have like a tear of joy rolling down my left eye. Like,
yeah,
keep going, keep talking.
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. I'm really glad that you're here.
Likewise to everybody. Thank you, Bridget, too.
You're welcome. Anyone else have anything they want to chime in about something new in their relationship with nature? All right. Go
Sorry,
ahead, Kim.
Bridget, it
No, go
just took
ahead.
me a second to. I was
Faster.
thinking
No.
that quickly. No, I, I think for what's changed for me by trying as much as I could to be a part of these discussions, and I have learned so much from each and every one of you. It's been awesome. It's kind of like added bonus right to the book and Renee's sharing of the winds of spirit. But I think for me, one of the questions I kind of struggled with a lot of the information I've been learning about energy and spirit and consciousness, is the struggle has always been, okay, so I'm learning all this stuff. How do I integrate it into my daily life so that I can so that it helps me to live a better life, a fuller life, and I think that's what this has done for me. Being a part of this book study group has helped me to kind of apply a lot of the teachings to daily life and integrate them by using nature, the wind, the water. Kamloops actually means the First Nations word for meeting of two rivers. So we're very fortunate enough to live between the by the North and South Thompson rivers in BC, and right at the meeting of the two rivers. And I've been finding myself going down to the river a lot more, and that's where I kind of commune with the wind and the other elements. And but it's become much more of a daily practice, and I can actually feel how I am integrating it into my life on a regular basis. Like I feel calmer, I feel more peaceful, I feel stronger. Oh yeah, it's been awesome. I thank you all very much.
Thank you, Kim. Whew.
Thank you.
So let's open up the call. We still have chapter 16, but both at the end of chapter 15 and chapter 16 are practices. And since the nature of our calls is not teaching, it's more integration, if you will, or, communing. What would you like to discuss from the reading of chapter 15 and 16? So, just feel free to open the mic and share what you'd like to bring into the discussion. I'm very emotional right now. Goodbyes are hard for me, you guys. Well, it's not goodbye. It's just on to the next.
What one thing that stood out for me about in chapter 15 was the practice of conjuring the inner wind and conjuring an inner wind. And we talk a lot about calling in the wind, but then so it sounds like it's coming from outside of us, but yet the title of that practice is conjuring an inner wind. So we're one with the wind. Mm-hmm. We are breathing it in, and for that time we are one. So it is an inner experience, and that struck me, because a lot of times we're saying, calling to, Tate, calling to Oya, but it's within us, like, as well. Like, we kind of touched on this earlier a little bit, I think, in different ways, that we are one with spirit. If we are, we are breathing and living dependent on the wind, but anyway, that experience of embodying the breath and being animated by our breath, energized by our breath, there's a lot to that. Mm-hmm. It's powerful.
Mm-hmm. And what a great teacher for non-attachment.
Yeah.
We can only hold the breath in us for so long, and we have to let it go. So we are always in a new breath. Every moment is now. There is no behind, forward. It is literally right now. When you are on the breath, following the breath, with that inner breath, like, it's there for as long as we can hold it, and then we let go. And then we start again. And so it's like the wind is such a phenomenal teacher about non-attachment. So we just solved like millions of hours of Buddhist teaching with one breath. It's not that simple, but I think you understand where I'm heading with that. Anyone else? What would you like to share from these chapters?
The reminder that it's not for the faint of heart.
Oh yeah, love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So often, when I've worked with people in the past in the healing arts, they want to change, and they say they want to change, but they don't necessarily have the willingness to do so. And I think with the wind work, it takes that wishy-washiness out of it, when the wind comes, speaking of water, and that just kind of the wishy-washy, it's so direct and penetrating that, you don't have any choice, Maybe you do, I don't know.
Yeah, we have choice. We're choosing to not resist. Once you say yes, you're choosing to non-resistance until it gets to be too much, and then you can say Taba.
Yeah, sometimes I think that we actually don't have a choice, that it's there until we have to, finish incomplete business, or have to address that which is, I think that sometimes that's what this work is acknowledging that we don't have a choice at times.
Yeah, and as I listen to the way that what you're saying is cycling through me, is I'm creating a distinction between choosing and controlling. And so I'm hearing you use the word choice, but I am thinking about we choose to engage, or we choose to begin, by inviting that relationship, but we can't control the way that it unfolds. That's how I'm hearing you.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah. I mean, control is sometimes, elusive, right?
Yeah.
Like the wind.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, but I don't know. I'm sorry. I should just be quiet.
No, you don't.
I'll go mute.
No, you don't have to go mute. No. Keep your voice moving. Please, you don't have to silence yourself. You haven't. I just want to make sure that I am meeting you and hearing you correctly, because that's what's coming up as I'm listening to you. But it may not be accurate for what you're trying to express, and so that's why I was saying that.
I guess if we take a look at it, is sometimes we are. There's capitulation, there's capitulation that happens,
Mm-hmm.
and that we don't have a choice when the wind strikes.
Mm-hmm.
You have to. You don't have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
There's this avoidance, and then sometimes we get catapulted into situations.
Yeah.
And the wind carries us right through the air to our landing space.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I mean more. That's really what I mean, that sometimes we're catapulted out. We just don't have a choice but to serve.
Yeah. Thank you. And go back to all of the tools that we've learned, right? Like hoping that those tools will avail themselves in those moments when we're on the wind, so to speak, flying through the wind. Yeah. Yeah.
That's why it's not for the faint of heart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been very humbled by the winds. I'm an Aries, an only child, type A personality, and I can tell you that they've brought me to my knees several times where I'm like, I surrender. You've made your point. I am with you. I am not against you. I will be the leaf on the wind. I'm done. Yeah.
I will say that I just came from getting a crown put on.
Mm.
So
Yes,
my mouth been becoming feeling again,
Mm-hmm.
And it was the best crown I've ever had. It was just like I didn't suffer at all. It it was really amazing, and I really think that this work had a lot to do with that.
Oh, good. Good.
If it means anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Deborah, were you going to share?
Yes, I was thinking about resistance and wondering if, isn't resistance a type of choice? I mean, the winds come and we can go with it or we can resist. I mean, it's not wise to resist, but isn't that a choice? And,
Yeah.
you know, I have an issue with resistance. So I'm very intrigued by the removing resistance to change, because it's something that's deep from childhood and survival techniques and whatnot. I've been studying all of that for quite a few years. But removing resistance to change. I like the idea that our body, you know, is a map to this secret treasure chest of awakening. I definitely agree with that. And the integrating the wind wisdom into everything. I think that's my goal. I am looking to just learn how to live this every day. I've done it with nature and absolutely love nature. And, you know, as far as deepening, having an intimate relationship with nature, I have with trees, with the earth. There's been lots of visions and communication, and now it's just like, wow, the wind's been there all along, encompassing all of it. So I'm going to look, I love these steps, you know, these exercises with steps. I need to practice these. I only just read them today. But I'm just curious about this removing resistance to change.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny because we all come from different traditions and teachings, right? And so your question, isn't resistance a choice? Yes and no, because as you've acknowledged, there's some really deep, deep, deep resistance from childhood. That's in your primitive brain. We're not even choosing it in the moment. Like, it's so automatic, right? But I was on a call with a client recently, and she's been having a lot of resistance. And I said, what if you moved in the direction of your resistance? If you went at the resistance head on, as opposed to backing away from it or stepping to the side, if you went into the resistance. So choosing resistance as the path of most opportunity. And she was like, what? Abraham Hicks always talks about going in the path of least resistance. And I'm like, right, when we're in alignment. But how are we going to get into alignment when we're resisting the opportunity, right? Like, at least if you walked into it and just looked around for a minute, maybe you would get some new information that you're missing by moving to the side all the time.
It's almost homeopathic.
Yeah. But then there's also this thing with resistance that I've noticed where sometimes neutrality, like when you think of the wind going against a building, right? The wind finds another way around the building, but the building will remain. You can't make the building move. So what is that relationship, right? Like, there are certain parts of us, I think, that are solid in their formation, if you will, like maybe core characteristics or core parts of us that we might not like, but they're of benefit to our overall personality or identity. So that's just something that I play with sometimes. Like, I don't like this about myself, but why is that? And do I have to keep resisting this? What if I embraced it? What could be different?
Yes, I agree with embracing. oh, the darkness, the shadows, there's so much to learn from that. I was just thinking as you were talking about how I like to go, when I go outside, I stand where I can feel the wind from all directions, and then turn in the four directions so that I can see how it feels. So I'm thinking resistance is sort of like facing the wind. Like the buffalo, herds of buffalo, and if there's a storm, they face the storm, they go into it and through it. And whereas the cattle, you've probably heard this, the cattle go with the storm. So they're staying in the storm for a longer period of time. Buffalo are quite smart. Just go through it, meet it, embrace it, and move through. So
yeah,
thank you. Yes.
that is a type of that's a type of removal of resistance. Right? The natural way is to avert, like, ooh, it's too hard, it's too much, it's, whatever, too, whatever it is. And so we go like this, and we don't actually, so removing that thought that's preventing us from engaging. That's how I see the removal of resistance. I don't see it as like removing the obstacle, so to speak. It's like removing my inhibition or my like trepidation, if you will, to being in that moment.
But you're saying to acknowledge it first, and then move through it.
Yeah,
Okay.
remove the resistance to it. And this is not like a one size fits all. There are definitely some things
I know.
right? I'm like, disclaimer. This is not. Stop. Anyone else? I noticed that we're at our time, so I just want to be mindful of that and make sure that we close out our circle in entirety, since this is our last call. So
I'll just say that in chapter 16, there was a lot about the focus, like call on the inner wind, and like I brought that up in the last thing I was talking about, but open to the inner wind god that can help you today. And just thinking of all of these winds as aspects of ourselves, soul parts, or whatever you want to call it. All of these lessons or personalities of the winds are aspects of ourselves. So what are we going to call what we call to ourselves on any given day, and it resonates, is because it's part of us. That's what I've been thinking about. And it's not so much focus on external when we're calling these winds in. And in the book, she's calling them inner winds. So for me, that's been a way that I've come to look at the winds as not something outside of myself, even though, yes, we see nature, but the inner winds are a part of me. And so we're integrating. I mean, maybe we're only integrating one at a time, but we're getting to know that one part. And I don't know, you might get where I'm going with that, but
no, I'm right there with you. Yeah.
That's what I am thinking of, is just, yeah, that's all I wanted to share lastly.
And the qualities, right? So thinking of the four cardinal directions, the four cardinal winds, as bringing in a different quality of that same deity or archetype or self.
Yes.
Right?
And here we are in our magnetic center, but there's all these, like, it's really making more sense about the compass and all the points on the compass. And you can, that is like our whole, that is making our whole. But that is all these individual winds are aspects of me. And all at once, I can focus on one. It might be the one that's showing up, but all those other parts are still there. So yeah, that's what I've been thinking about.
I like it. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Well, let's just take a moment to just let everything that we've discussed today in this really rich dialogue, just whatever's going to sink in and stay and ruminate will, and whatever's meant to just roll off will naturally occur. And I invite each of us to start making our attention known back in our sacred space. And just really taking a moment to give the winds a burst of gratitude, either from your heart space or from your throat or your mind's eye, however you wish to do it. Just really thanking them for holding this container for us for all of these weeks, supporting our conversations, being with us when we're in nature and within our own conscious awareness of our breath. And as you begin to make your way back through the stone archway, I would just like to extend my gratitude for your participation in the book study, your willingness to engage this work, experiment, and be enlivened by the winds, and bringing all of yourself here on these calls every Thursday, even when it may not have been easy to do so, and supporting us from afar when you were not able to join. So thank you all so much for being with us, and I'm wishing you a really beautiful weekend ahead, and hoping to see many of you in the Shift Network class beginning on December 12th. Aho.
Thank you, Bridget.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We had a good time.
It was so fun.
Thank you. It was.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
everyone.
Thank you. Mwah. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Bye-bye.